there's a number of mechanisms of action with hyperbaric. Basically, there's impact on the immune system, there's impact on the mitochondria, and then there's this whole impact on regeneration and cellular repair. And so when we look at mechanisms of action, it's like, no matter who you are, what your goals or issues might be, and what we're trying to accomplish with the chamber, it's like every person who goes in gets these varieties of benefits. One of which happens in that regenerative capacity. It stimulates collagen, so the part that makes your skin, your soft tissue, your ligaments, your tendons. It also stimulates fibroblasts, which are the cells that actually would heal, let's say, ligament or muscle or tendon damage. It mobilizes stem cells, so bringing new cells, like naive cells, to repair, injury.
Two, three. Welcome back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio podcast and television show. I'm your host, life coach Myrna Young, and sitting in the guest chair today is Dr. Jason Sunners. Dr. Sunners and I are going to be talking on the topic, Oxygen is Medicine, the benefits of hyperbaric oxygen therapy. Welcome, Dr. Sunners.
Thank you. Happy to be here. I love having an opportunity to share this information. So thanks again.
Yes. And it's new information for my show and for my audience. So I'm going to be learning right along with them. So I want to know why oxygen is medicine. That's amazing. All right. So let me give you guys a brief introduction. Dr. Jason Sunners is a renowned chiropractor and hyperbaric medicine expert with multiple diplomas, certifications, and pursuing a PhD in molecular biology, focusing on regenerative medicine. Founder of HBOT USA, he serves on the boards of the International Hyperbaric Association and the International Board of Undersea Medicine. He co-owns Core Therapies Family Wellness Center and several hyperbaric clinics. And he's also the author of the best-selling book, Oxygen Under Pressure. Awesome. When you say that, it brings me back to a movie that I saw about Last Breath, where this guy was, he's on a,
Very familiar. Yes. Yeah.
yeah, he was diving and oxygen. Yeah. So when you say oxygen under pressure, that's what comes to mind. All right. So I'm glad that you saw that movie. Maybe we can incorporate it in our conversation today. But for me and all my listening audience, let's start off with what exactly is hyperbaric oxygen therapy?
Yeah. So as simply as I can make it, hyper is increased, baric is pressure. Okay. So it just means increased pressure. And even right now, you and I are sitting here, we're having a conversation, we're breathing. The fact that you can pull oxygen out of the environment and actually drive it into your circulation is because we're surrounded by an atmosphere. That atmosphere has a pressure to it. And the pressure of our atmosphere is what allows us to really pull oxygen out of the air we're breathing. A lot of us have had an experience, especially your viewers in Colorado. You go up to elevation, and as you go up in elevation, we know that it feels more difficult to breathe. We say that there's less oxygen, but percentage-wise, it's the same amount of oxygen, no matter if you're at sea level or the top of Mount Everest. The difference between sea level and, let's say, elevation is not percentage of oxygen, it's the pressure of the atmosphere. So as we go up in elevation and we lose pressure, it becomes harder to breathe because we have less driving force of oxygen into our circulation. When we go below sea level, which is what hyperbaric is actually doing, and increases atmospheric pressure temporarily, we can increase dramatically the amount of oxygen we have available. So really, all that hyperbaric is going into a chamber that's pressurized above whatever normal atmospheric pressure somebody's accustomed to, and breathing air or oxygen at higher pressure, which is allowing us to pull more of oxygen out of the gases that we're breathing and drive a considerable amount of increased oxygen into our cells.
Wow. Yes. Okay. So I got that because I'm well aware of what happens on Mount Everest and people have to walk with oxygen. But you're right. We're always told that the oxygen level decreases and that you don't have oxygen. But I love what you're introducing into this conversation is that it has something to do with the pull, right? It's
Right.
some
The
kind of
pressure or the
right.
pressure is like a driving force. It's really, we don't feel it. You don't feel the pressure at sea level. You don't feel less pressure at at elevation in terms of like experience, but the pressure is really what's driving the gases for sure.
Wow, wow, wow. All right, so let's spend a minute and explain what that is because listen, I'm a meditator and I know that to be conscious of the breath because we don't see it. I know about quantum energy. I know about what we're breathing in is life force, right? So I know that this breath that we take in, and if when we stop breathing, we die. So I know that the breath is part of our human experience. But, explain it so that somebody that's, yeah, you're right. We're breathing, we're talking, we're breathing in, oxygen, breathing out CO2. Um, uh, but for someone that's want to understand the mechanics of it all, what's going on here? What is this pressure all about? And if the pressure stops, why is it that we can't breathe? Let's get deep.
So, yeah, no, that's good. So, what I would say is, um, oxygen, we're talking about hyperbaric, which is a very specific delivery of oxygen,
Okay.
but oxygen, just as a molecule, is incredibly important for almost every one of your cells to function.
Mhm.
The way that and for most people, I'm glad you bring up things like meditation. Like, most people are not aware of their breath. Most people have poor posture, they take shallow breaths, they're stressed. So, you know even just relaxing and diaphragmatically breathing and doing breath work and meditation are all ways that we can drive more oxygen into our cells, which, oxygen in our cells is incredibly important. And, if you've ever had, I don't think I have one here, but, you know, a pulse oximeter on your finger. Yeah, I do actually. So you go to the doctor and they put one of these things on your
Yeah.
finger.
Right.
So as long as you have a healthy heart and healthy lungs, most of us are 98, 99%
Mhm.
saturated. In other words, we read these numbers and you're already carrying as much oxygen as your body is capable of carrying.
Mm.
Now, because of that, having additional oxygen outside of, let's say, being 100% saturated or even more than 100% saturated. In other words, being more than 100% of anything is impossible, right?
Okay.
So, maybe someone's 96, 97% saturated. They start to learn how to breathe. They breathe normally. They're relaxed. They're doing diaphragmatic breathing. And we get this thing from 97 to 100,
Mhm.
which is incredibly important and very powerful for a lot of people, in
Mhm.
addition to all the other benefits that you and I both know about meditation and breath work.
Right.
But if we wanted more oxygen, what if we needed more oxygen because somebody was injured, or because we were really trying to improve cognitive function, or because we were trying to boost creativity exponentially beyond what normally we can carry? There would be no way to increase the amount of oxygen someone's carrying unless you actually increased the pressure of our atmosphere, which you and I just don't have control over that.
Mhm. Mhm.
But if you go into one of these chambers, a hyperbaric chamber, that's what's happening. You're creating a temporary increase in atmospheric pressure. And now we're no longer bound by red blood cells being the only way you carry oxygen. We're actually bypassing red blood cell carrying capacity altogether. And now we're actually driving increased levels of oxygen into your blood in other ways that are otherwise literally impossible. So the plasma of your blood, which is like the liquid portion, that usually doesn't carry much oxygen at all. It becomes a reservoir of almost unlimited carrying capacity. And so depending on how much pressure we're using, what percentage of oxygen we're breathing, and then how long we stay in the chamber, those are the three variables that we can use to create this. We call it a surplus, like this extra amount of oxygen that's normally impossible to carry. But because of this environment, we can drive it in. And now you have enough for repair, recovery, boosting your immune system, reducing inflammation, or, stimulating all of these repair and regenerative mechanisms that hyperbaric is capable of.
I love it. I love it. So now I know where I've seen that because I've seen it in some spas or something. So explain what that looks like for our listeners. Because I'm getting the visual, thinking that I've seen it before. It's like a tank. Then it's like maybe
They come in different shapes and sizes.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, they could be a soft material, they could be a hard material, they could be steel with a few windows, or they could be, glass, acrylic is what it is, but it looks like a glass tube that's, see-through in every direction. But what it is yeah, essentially it's a chamber, it's airtight. And because it's airtight, when we pressurize it, when we fill it with oxygen or we fill it with air, we can compress a whole lot more gas inside that same cylinder, under pressure than we could, let's say, at the pressure where you and I are sitting, right now. And so, oxygen. So let me say it this way. Even in a car, you bring in fuel and the car has to breathe. You bring in oxygen, and oxygen oxidizes the fuel. There's a chemical reaction between oxygen and gasoline that creates an explosion. We call it combustion. And then that creates power for the car to go, and it creates heat. The engine gets very hot. Inside of all of our cells are these things called mitochondria. Back in like 7th or 8th grade, we learned, if your audience remembers, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. It's the part of the cell that makes energy. But you have to bring in fuel. So we eat food, that food gets processed into a certain ingredient, and then we have to bring in oxygen. And when we oxidize our fuel, we don't call that combustion, we call that metabolism. But all of your cells, the metabolism is really just burning fuel, and it requires a fuel source and it requires oxygen. And the cleaner and healthier the fuel and the higher amount of oxygen that we can drive in, the hotter the fire we can burn. And so we can really burn a higher metabolism because of driving all of this extra oxygen in. It allows us to make more energy, and it allows us to improve that metabolic, fire inside for, all of that energy production as well.
Wow. I love that. I love that. My goodness, we're all going to live to 200 now. I mean, with all these things,
I think so.
all these sciences that are coming in this world. I mean, I don't want to touch on the longevity part of it yet, but as I'm listening, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, right? If we can get more oxygen and we can, or we can have more fuel and we can repair, that's amazing. We're going to be living forever. Yes.
I just got back from a conference that was living to 180 and beyond.
See, I was joking.
Yeah. So people are headed, people are trying to figure that out.
Because I know that's where it's going. I mean, I didn't want to introduce it quite yet, but I know that's where it's going, because when you're talking about all these ways to repair and to do all these different things, that's the reason. Okay, so now
let me say this first. We live in a time, even right now, where lifespan is somewhere, or, low to mid 80s. So like average lifespan right now is between like 82 to 86 years old. But quality of life index is still stuck at around 60 to 64. And so
Yes.
what that actually means is that even though, let's say in the early 1900s, lifespan was like low to mid 50s. So we've pushed lifespan, let's say about 30 years, which is incredible, but we've only pushed quality of life about 10. And so what that translates to for you and I is that we see a lot of people as they're aging, my parents, my grandparents, we saw them living. Most of my family did live into the actually late 80s, even early 90s. But their quality of life in their last 20 years was not great.
Yes.
And so what I would say is the first thing we have to do before we start talking about living to 200 is we have to start learning how to live those last 15 to 20 years as well as we can,
Yes.
avoiding all the age-related chronic diseases, that really steal quality of life from people from like their 60s into their 80s. And once we nail that, then we can start dealing with like the outer edges of what's possible on longevity. But,
Exactly. Right.
age-related chronic illness is still, to me, the number one concern for most people. And
Yes.
there's so many strategies for really learning how to manage that.
Yes. Well, I'm going to go off on a tangent now because I have Healthspan as one of my most important values. I walk, I meditate, I take care of I check all the different boxes. And I do that because I want health span. I want to live into my mid 90s. I'm not going for 180. I want to live, I'm hopeful to live into my mid 90s, but I want to be walking. I want to be doing all the different things and whatever. And I read something the other day that's actually stuck in my head. And I know that I need to get rid of it, but it makes me jumpy because I actually read something the other day that most people have 2 years of health span after they get to 65, which is a really, you just said it, right? Yeah, so people put off things to do in life until they're 65, and then they've just got a couple more years and they don't have it. So that's on the back of my mind because I'm in my 60s, but I'm still working along and doing all these different things. And I do have to start tapping into all these longevity things because there's so much out there that you just can't do the normal things that you were doing before. You need to tap into them. So so now let's talk about how HBOT supports cellular repair, reduces inflammation, and boosts brain function.
Yeah, so there's a number of mechanisms of action with hyperbaric. Basically, there's impact on the immune system, there's impact on the mitochondria, and then there's this whole impact on regeneration and cellular repair. And so when we look at mechanisms of action, it's like no matter who you are, what your goals or issues might be, and what we're trying to accomplish with the chamber, it's like every person who goes in gets these varieties of benefits. One of which happens in that regenerative capacity. It stimulates collagen, so the part that makes your skin, your soft tissue, your ligaments, your tendons. It also stimulates fibroblasts, which are the cells that actually would heal, let's say, ligament or muscle or tendon damage. It mobilizes stem cells, so bringing new cells, like naive cells, to repair, injury or if the term senescent cells, are you familiar with that term?
I've heard it once, but I don't remember what it is. Someone
So a
mentioned
senescent cell is like, it's the number of cells that make us up today, 70 trillion or so, but they're not the same cells that we were born with. We're constantly losing cells, getting new ones, losing cells, getting new ones. And so a senescent cell is a cell that should have died, but it didn't die, but it's no longer behaving the way the rest of the cell should be behaving, but it won't die. And so
die.
one of the goals inside of, repair and regeneration is to eliminate senescent cells, because that creates a void that stimulates stem cells to migrate in. And so, hyperbaric will eliminate senescent cells and create the opportunity for stem cells to migrate in and start repairing those either injuries or dysfunctional cells and tissues. And so there's quite a few mechanisms that hyperbaric stimulates those pathways.
Yeah, that's probably where I've heard of it before. Wow, that's amazing. So I think where I heard about that senescent cells before is under the term autophagy. So is that what this is doing? It's the same thing. It's repairing, like
Exactly.
fasting. Okay.
Autophagy is like recycling cells.
Mhm.
Apoptosis is killing a cell. So sometimes you can just recycle some parts and make it new again. Sometimes you just kill it off completely. But those are both two different pathways for
Okay.
helping the body cleanse itself of older dysfunctional cells, allowing new cells to migrate in for improved cellular performance.
Okay, so that's amazing. So let's touch on the stem cell for a minute. So I know that we all have stem cells. It's where we were born with, and I understood before I started having all these conversations, which is why I love this show, is that I speak to experts and I learn things. But I learned that we are, or we're all still creating stem cells, even as we age. It's not the same ones that we had as a baby. So, give us that again about how, this hyperbaric chamber works with these stem cells, and just confirm or deny that we make them all the time, because I might have wrong information.
No, yeah, we do. So,
Mm.
you started out once upon a time, a few years ago, you started out as one cell that became two, that became four, that became eight, right? During that whole process of embryonic development, we have massive stem cell growth and proliferation, and then what's called differentiation. So at first, one cell has all of the information. Well, they always have all, but one cell starts to become, okay, I'm going to specialize in muscle, and then I'm going to specialize in bone, and I'm going to specialize in your nervous system, right? So that's the differentiation process. And so even though every cell has the information to have become any other cell, once it differentiates, that's the only thing it ever becomes. And when it replicates, it turns a bone cell into a new bone cell, into a new bone cell, into a new bone.
Okay. All right.
Stem cells are still, they're called naive, but they're because they haven't differentiated yet. And although we don't replicate stem cells as quickly as we age, we still are always making them, and they are always being used. But there's 11. We don't have to go through all of them. There's 11 hallmarks of aging, and stem cell depletion is one of them. So we start to get lower and lower counts of stem cells, and we start mobilize them slower and slower. One of the things, it's a little off topic, but a chameleon, or when a lizard like loses a tail or an arm and it can grow it back. Like, what makes them so efficient at regrowing, regenerating a limb? It's how well it controls inflammation, how quickly it mobilizes stem cells, and how efficiently it utilizes oxygen. Those are literally the three things.
You bring it right back.
That's it. So if you think that, and then you say, humans, if we could, a lot of times we're already chronically inflamed. And when we have to respond to inflammation, we don't do it very well, especially as we age. So if we can control our inflammation better, if we had access to more oxygen, and we were much quicker at mobilizing those stem cells, our ability to heal and I'm not saying we're going to grow back arms and legs anytime soon, but our ability to regenerate cells and tissues would grow dramatically. And so the one interesting thing about hyperbaric is it does all three of those things.
Wow.
Hyperbaric by itself reduces inflammation. Hyperbaric by itself stimulates an increase in how quickly and effectively we can mobilize stem cells. And Um, so inflammation, the stem cells, and of course, hyperbaric is oxygen. So
Right.
the ability to deliver a really high level of oxygen to that repair, that area that needs repair, is incredibly efficient. And so, we see really, quite honestly, we see a lot of things that in traditional medicine people would say is virtually impossible, but we see it happening on a regular basis. It's pretty incredible.
That's amazing. So yeah, we can't grow back arms yet.
Not yet.
So there's I'm not sure one of the Marvel movies, they can grow things back. I don't remember which one it is, but you cut it off and it grows back. We can't do that yet, but I'm almost sure. I mean, if I were to take a guess that maybe it can help with our organs. I mean, let's say that we have this pancreas that's not working, which 70% of the population do with diabetes. Can it help with that? Can it help with organs or not?
Well, it could help with organs, but it helps in a number of ways. Again, Europe, every it makes sense, and people understand it quickly with muscles. Like the more energy you can get to a muscle, the stronger or the faster that muscle would respond.
Right.
But that's true of your kidneys, that's true of your liver, that's true of your brain, that's true of your pancreas. So if we can make a cell produce more energy, then we can make that cell do its job more effectively, more efficiently, more quickly, produce a higher level of work. And quite honestly, inflammation, which I was saying earlier, most people, even people who are not diagnosed with anything, still carry a higher level of inflammation in their bodies than what I believe we were originally designed to carry. And there's a number of reasons for that, be it our food
Diet,
supply, our
right.
stress levels,
Me,
toxicity. I mean,
right.
right. So,
Yes. Mhm.
um,
Okay.
bringing those inflammation levels down allows for a higher level of production of energy. Driving more oxygen into the cell allows for a higher level. And so all of a sudden, a liver that was a little sluggish starts detoxifying faster.
Wow.
A brain that was a little sluggish starts computing information more quickly.
Right.
A small intestine that was sluggish starts absorbing nutrients more efficiently. So, we do see a lot of different organ benefit from that exposure to oxygen for sure.
And I just remember where I've heard of the hyperbaric oxygen, therapy. The athletes do it, right? I think LeBron has one.
Yeah, LeBron has one. A lot of the
See?
famous.
It just
Yeah,
cemented where I heard of it. Right. Okay.
exactly. So, the
Mhm.
same way it might help someone who's sick or has certain issues heal and become more healthy, you can use those same principles for somebody that is healthy and actually use that more for performance or recovery. So
Yeah.
we see it a lot in basketball, baseball, football, hockey, soccer. A lot of the performance athletes are using hyperbaric.
I love it. Yes, that's basically where I've heard it. Yes. Yes. All right. So, what are some actionable strategies to enhance our energy, clarity, and resilience through oxygen-based therapies?
So again, I think we could start that conversation just by saying if you're not already doing, breath work, if you're not already learning how to manage your stress through changing your body position, through changing your breathing, um, that's where you start. Because, if those are issues inside or outside the chamber, right? And, we're not, yeah, even if you have access to a hyperbaric chamber, you're not going to live in it. So
I like
learning
that.
how to manage your environment and manage your stressors and using breath as a tool to deliver oxygen and help regulate your nervous system is by far one of the most important things most people can do if they're not already.
Yes.
Outside of that, finding access to a chamber it's an incredible tool. It's not something you do every day for the rest of your life, but it is something that you might do for 3 or 4 weeks at a time, an hour a day, a few days a week, and then maybe not do it for a few weeks or months. Do it again and then not do it for a few weeks or months. It's something that you need periodic exposures to get these, boosts of activity from our cells Some people go to a clinic and will go to, like, I run a few offices. You can go to a clinic like mine and do it inside my office. Other people might do it at home. Like, you could buy these chambers or rent these chambers and actually, do something like this type of therapy in the comfort of your own home. And so there's a range of ways to get access to it, but it is a critically important tool to, just like eating right, exercising, like you said, doing your walks, doing your meditation. There are certain practices that are foundational in our life for our health span.
Mhm.
Oxygen is one of them. On a regular basis, that could be by doing meditation and breath work. And on a periodic basis, that could be like coming to my office or an office like mine, or, having a chamber that rotates through. But essentially, just like all of it, it is a lifestyle based therapy. It's something that really has to be part of your ongoing maintenance for your health, not something you do twice in your life and never do again. It doesn't work.
Really? It's ongoing, huh? Wow, I love that. Well, you know what? I'll look into that. But yes, I meditate every day, and I walk, and that's my consciousness. I'm consciously trying, because I know there's a humongous amount of benefits of walking. I walk in the park, I get the nature. I walk in the sun because I live in Florida. So I get all three of those things, and then I meditate, and I know that if you can pull in deep breaths, that it works with, you're right, your vagus nerve and inflammation and all those things. So I'm practicing that. But like you said, if you first started up, yeah, when they put that thing on your finger, I'm normally around a 98. So you can't get to more than 100, right? And in order to get the benefits, we were talking about this pressurized oxygen, you need to go over to 100, right? So let's say that you never get access to this pressurized oxygen. If you stay at 98 to 100, what are the downfalls? Just look at the negative parts here.
Well, so I wouldn't say that there's like definitive downfalls. What I would say is that oxygen is a nutrient, okay? And it's a molecule required from our environment. We can't produce it ourselves, and it's part of our fuel. So if we lived in a otherwise healthy, relatively low stress, high quality food, the environment that I would argue we were probably designed to live in, hyperbaric would probably be less of a requirement.
Yeah.
But the fact that we live in a high stress, overly toxic, undernourished, there's challenges in our environment. Just like I'll get, you say sunlight, sunlight's an incredibly important part of, it's not the devil. We shouldn't be avoiding it. Right. But that doesn't also mean that we should be covering ourselves in baby oil with like reflectors trying to burn ourselves either. There's a way to access the health benefits of the sun.
Right.
And if you avoid the sun, or if you live in a place that doesn't give you proper access to the sun, or if you have a job that doesn't allow you to get the amount or quality of sun that you need, well, we have other tools like red light and UV, or, all of these, what's called photobiomodulation, but these light therapies that help us reap the benefit of light when we can't quite get access to the main light bulb that was designed to produce the health that we need, which is the sun. Well, similarly, you're getting all the oxygen a human was designed to get. You're 98, 99% saturated. There's no real consequence of that. But because we have old injuries that didn't heal properly, we have some toxicity issues, we're not getting as much exercise in some cases as we need to, or chronic inflammation, as I was saying earlier. Those are all things that become barriers to, even though you're saturated with oxygen, doesn't mean it's getting into the mitochondria, the part of the cell it needs to get into. So we have what we call barriers to diffusion. In order to overcome those barriers, pressure is really the only way to do it. So, there are some places like the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea is a outdoor location that happens to be below sea level. And so there's almost like a mild hyperbaric experience by being in a location that's outside but still below sea level.
I
But
know
outside of
that's
yeah,
one in Vegas, right? In Nevada, right?
no, the Dead Sea is in Israel.
Okay, all right. So
Yeah.
that's was with something else.
But finding these locations, and there's very few of them, but that's one way to get something like this. The only other way to get something like this is to substitute, a technology the same way we can use light as a technology for being light deficient.
Mhm.
We can use something like hyperbaric when we're a little oxygen deficient.
Yes. Well, we're not even oxygen deficient because you're right. We can live in the 98, 99 and still not get it, but it's good. Right. Supplementation is good for longevity, health span, and all those things that everybody wants. So that is amazing. Like I said, I'm going to get off of this call and go look for one here in Florida.
Where do you live in Florida?
Fort Myers.
Okay. There's definitely south of you. There's a few, like Naples. I know there's a few. I've never checked Fort Myers,
I'm
but
like only 45 minutes from Naples. So that's awesome. I could drive to Naples. Amazing. All right. Awesome. All right. So let's talk about how oxygen efficiency help prevent burnout and support our nervous system. I know we covered that a little bit, the nervous system, but maybe we can go a little deeper into it, like the burnout part. How does increasing your fuel through your mitochondria helps you with burnout?
sure. So, I mean, a few ways, but mostly what I would say there's like a short term and long term. So, in the short term, just like I said before, if you had an engine and you drove more oxygen into the engine, you get more power output.
Mhm.
Same thing if you have a mitochondria, which is the engine of your cell, and you drive more oxygen in, short term, you're definitely getting more energy output. If this happens to be something that you use on any regular basis, not only do you get that short term benefit, but imagine your car was like a 4-cylinder and it could become an 8-cylinder. Well, mitochondria, when they're exposed to elevated levels of oxygen over a period of time, they're going to grow in size. So the mitochondria actually grow into a bigger engine capable of producing even more energy.
Hmm.
If you keep using it for a period of time, imagine you had one 4-cylinder that became one 8-cylinder, and now all of a sudden you had 10 8-cylinder engines. How much energy you can produce. So over time, your mitochondria will grow in size. And if you keep exposing it, they'll actually grow in number.
Right.
And so over a period of time, you'll actually have more mitochondria per cell. And so you go from, small increases in energy every time you go into a chamber to larger amounts because the mitochondria is getting bigger to actually like 3 times, 8 times, 10 times more because now you have even more engines that are capable of burning that oxygen. The cell doesn't want to wait. Oxygen is so important. You and I have to breathe every minute of every day
Mhm.
just to keep that 100% saturation that we've been talking about.
Mhm.
There's no reservoir, right? You can only hold your breath for a few minutes.
Right.
You can go, I mean, you brought up fasting earlier. You can go, days, weeks, even months without food. And not only would you not die, I would argue that most people would be healthier if they actually did that, right? You can go days without water, but we can only go minutes without oxygen. And so when you're driving excessive
Hence
oxygen,
that movie that I talked to you about.
exactly right, exactly, yeah. So when you're getting that
We went
extra
8
oxygen,
minutes, and that was history. Yes, Eric, go ahead.
like stuck at the bottom of the ocean, yeah. We don't want to ruin the ending, but the answer was hyperbaric was the reason that the outcome was the outcome, essentially, right? Oxygen under pressure was
Ah,
right. That's actually
that's
what kept it
right. They couldn't. Yes. Okay.
right. So he was like 300 feet underwater,
Yeah.
and so that's a lot of pressure. That's a lot more than we ever use in a chamber, and he
Right.
was breathing, higher levels of oxygen. So
Mm.
That's actually how the outcome is the
They
outcome.
couldn't figure out why. I don't remember if they said it, but obviously. Anyway, yes, that's really great. I'm glad that my brain brought that up in the very beginning of our conversation when I talked about your book, Oxygen on Depression.
Right.
That's the visual I got. But anyway, yes, sorry, keep going.
Yeah. So no, it's just, so when you have that exposure to the oxygen over the time, and then then you actually get more mitochondria because the body won't allow you to waste oxygen. So once it sees that there's getting this surplus of oxygen on a regular basis, it doesn't want to waste it. It wants to make the most of it. And so our body goes through a lot of adaptations, just like somebody that lives in Colorado goes through adaptations because of a lack of oxygen,
Right.
lack of pressure. The body goes through a whole series of different adaptations when it's exposed to additional pressure or additional oxygen over time. And so there's a lot that we can utilize with that is going to prepare the body for being able to perform, under the rigors of what planet Earth delivers for us these days at a much healthier and higher quality of life. To your point earlier, really building, it's not the entire answer to health span at all, but it's certainly a very critical component to the picture of health span.
Yes, for sure. I mean, it can't definitely not hurt, right?
Right.
So, of all the things that it can do, repair and regeneration and oxygen and all those different things, you talked about the brain working better, you talk about the liver working better, you talk about your intestines working better. So, yeah, even if it gives you 5 years, it's still quite a lot. So, amazing. Boy, I love learning. So, all right. So tell us now about your company, HBOT USA, and then talk about your book, Oxygen Under Pressure. So we can just
Sure.
combine those things together and tell
Sure.
our audience one where I know you said you have several clinics, but now they all know that they can Google it and find one that's in their location. But
Yeah. So
let's know where you are. Right.
HBOT USA is really just like an education company. Like the HBOTUSA.com, we don't sell anything there. It's strictly what is hyperbaric? How does it work? Why does it work? Who should consider using it? What is it good for? It's really just a place to learn. We also have a YouTube channel, which is also HBOT USA. So HBOT USA. I think I have 600 some odd videos on, in 5 to 10 minute increments about very specific topics. Does it help with this? Does it help with that? What kind of thought process you ought to go through if you're considering using hyperbarics for this, that, or the other. So there's a lot of videos and a lot of education there for people just to learn, if they're curious. On hbotusa.com's website, we also have a locations page. And on that page is not every clinic that I've ever trained, but a lot of the clinics that I've trained that we still work very closely together. So I think there's about 65 or 70 clinics on that page, in variety of areas all over the country. And so there's still plenty of clinics doing hyperbaric that I'm not saying this is the only trusted source, but this is a source of clinics that I know because, essentially I've done their training and we've continued to work together over years. Most of what I do is teach hyperbaric medicine and certify technicians and doctors in hyperbarics as they're getting into hyperbaric medicine and trying to offer it to their patient base. And so that's mostly what I do. Oxygen Under Pressure was the second book I wrote, but the first one on hyperbarics. And that is really just it's for either, patients or doctors, but it's a very easy to read, introductory level of understanding of what hyperbaric is and what role it could play, both in patients that have issues that are trying to solve for, but also for those looking for performance enhancement or even health span. And more recently, I wrote another, like a textbook actually on hyperbaric that is a little bit more for practitioners, going through our courses. But yeah, that locations page is a great resource. And if you happen to look through there and there's no one near you, you could always shoot us an email at support@hbotusa.com. Like I said, there's plenty of people we know around the country, around the world that aren't necessarily on that list. So if we can help refer you somewhere that, we know that you'll get great care, we're very happy to do so.
Awesome, awesome. I love it. All right. Well, I'm definitely going to check out the locations close to me or in Florida, regardless if I have to go south or go north.
Yeah. Oh, there's Tampa too. So I think you can go both and Sarasota.
And Sarasota, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's north of me, right? Right.
Yeah.
I can go south or I can go north. And I'm definitely gonna put that on my schedule because you've convinced me that yes, that oxygen therapy
Certainly worth giving it a shot.
Yes, it is definitely. Well, John, I mean Jason, I don't know why I want to call you John. Oh, Jason, I really enjoyed our conversation today. I really glad that I have heard of it. I was able to get the visual with the movie. And yeah, you have inspired me to value my oxygen and to really give it, my conscious awareness, and not just because in your field that 95% of the time we're not even aware that we're breathing. We just
Right.
do it. We're not consciously breathing, so we're not taking any deep breaths and doing those type of things. So yes, I'm at least in that space that I know that the breath and breathing is very important, and being aware that I'm breathing. In fact, I do a meditation from Thich Nhat Hanh that says, breathing in, I know that I'm breathing in, breathing out, I know that I'm breathing out. And yeah, because 99
That awareness.
we don't know that we're breathing, right? So that's amazing. All right. So listen, I enjoyed my conversation with you. I love being aware of things that can help me improve my health span. So yes, I'll be jumping on board. Listeners, yes, go and check out Dr. Jason Sunners on his page. It's very easy, hbotusa.com. I will have a link to his page and his book and his YouTube videos on the show page, which is under myhelps.us, and also a brief a summary of my conversation with him with the highlights, so that you can go there and read or re-listen to the podcast, or contact him. One of the last things, what is your social media handle?
I have no idea. Probably H by USA. I'm not in charge of those things. I just
So we're not in charge of those things, right?
I make the content. Other people put it places. But
Yeah. All right. So I'll look for you under your name or either under because I also share your links because that's where everybody is these days.
I appreciate that.
They're on
Thanks.
social media. I'll share your links on the show page as well.
Awesome.
All right. Well, listen, guys. Oh, listen. This is the quality kind of guest that I bring to you, and I love this kind of information. We're talking about longevity. We're talking about health span. We're talking about lifespan. That we didn't, this was a deep conversation, so we didn't get into. Yes, you can live until 95, but if you're from 65 to 95, that you're unhealthy, or you're in a bed, or you're in a home. That's not the way. At least I want to live. So I'm sure you want to do it either. So these are some of the things that you can do to help that along, the body, help that along. And oxygen is one of, I was reading something the other day, is that you breathe in, and you're not know when is your last breath, because your last breath is when you die. Oxygen. And so it's very important for, longevity in life. And so now we can use it to live a better life. So thank you, Jason, for being on the show.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Any last words as we wrap up?
I don't think so. I think, we covered it all. So I appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity to share with your audience.
All right. Well, thanks again. Thank you guys for tuning in to this week's episode of Transform Your Mind so you can transform your life. Thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, namaste.